Hey there, I'm here with a fun video. This is a popular series on my channel where I ask fellow food creators what's in their fridge or pantry. And today, I'm going to show you what's in my home pantry. Now, I am a working chef and cookbook author who travels a ton. So this is what I keep in my pantry at home when I'm not traveling. You'll notice that it's pretty simple. I don't have a lot of stuff in here. I'm not really a hoarder. In fact, I probably go to the grocery store about once a week. I don't like to keep a lot of things around. I just get tired of them. But these are some of the things I do keep in my pantry and use frequently. First up, we've got two things here that aren't actually in the pantry. They're in the little nook right beside it. First is my collection of oils and vinegars. I try to keep some sort of olive oil in the house at all times because I use it so much. And then I also keep an oil for frying, which right now is peanut oil. But sometimes I'll switch it up and use canola or rice oil. And then over here is just a collection of different vinegars that I like to use. Sometimes I like to cook with white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. I have some rice vinegar, which I use in my salad dressings. I have some interesting ones, like this black vinegar from China, which I like to use in salad dressings as well. And I always have this sherry vinegar on deck. It's kind of hard to find. It's hard to get it. I usually buy it when I'm in Europe, but it's my favorite vinegar. I love it. I use it all the time. I use it in salad dressings. I use it to deglaze pans. I put it on chicken before I roast it. It adds this really nice, sweet, rich, complex flavor to everything. And then finally, I have some aged balsamic vinegar here, which again I use all the time. I use it in salad dressings, but I also like to use it in cocktails. One of my favorite cocktails is a boulevardier. It's an old-fashioned with Campari instead of Angostura bitters, and it calls for balsamic vinegar, which I always have on hand. And then, back to the pantry. The next thing that I keep on hand at all times is salt. Now, I'm a cookbook author, so I have a lot of cookbooks, and I travel a lot, which means that I'm constantly testing recipes. And so I like to keep my salt on the low end rather than on the high end, meaning I like to keep my salt fairly neutral. So I tend to use a lot of sea salt because it's very neutral. I also keep kosher salt on hand. This is actually diamond crystal kosher salt, which is my preferred kosher salt. And then I also like to keep some flaky sea salt around, which is good for finishing. Right now I have some from Spain, but sometimes I'll get them from other places. That just depends on what I'm using. Next up, we've got my collection of dried goods. The first one is black peppercorns. I always like to keep black peppercorns around. I grind them fresh when I need them. And then right here, I have some whole dried thyme. I use this a lot. I add this to braises. I add this to sauces. And then I have some rosemary here. This is actually fresh rosemary that I dried myself. I did that last summer. And then I have some oregano. This is the only herb that I ever buy dried, because I find that dried oregano is very, very good. Fresh oregano is not great. It's really grassy and doesn't have a lot of flavor. So I always buy oregano dried. And then I have some chili flakes, which I use in just about everything. I'm a real chili freak. I love spicy food. I could handle really, really hot chilies, so I always have those on hand. And then I have some sumac here, which is really nice for adding a lemony flavor to things. I use this in tabbouleh, in salads. It's really nice. And then I have some toasted sesame seeds. I use these all the time, especially when I'm making pad thai. And then I have some ground cumin here, which I use all the time. And then I have some turmeric. I'm really into golden milk lattes, which are made with turmeric, so I always keep that on hand. And then I have some mustard seeds, which I use a lot, especially when I'm making Indian food. And then finally, I have some fenugreek here, which is also really good for Indian food. Alright, so let's move on to the next shelf here. On this shelf, I keep all my baking supplies. I try to bake at least once a week. My daughter loves to bake, so I keep all the basics here: flour, sugar, brown sugar, baking soda, baking powder, cornstarch. I have some cake flour here, which is really good for cakes and for pie crusts. And then I have some semolina, which I use when I'm making pasta. I also make a lot of Italian cookies called biscotti, which are twice baked, so I like to keep the semolina around. And then I have some more dried pasta here. I like to keep different shapes of dried pasta around. When I'm not traveling, I like to eat dinner at home every night, and so I'll often make a quick pasta dish. And I like to keep some pasta around. And sometimes I'll keep it in the pantry like this. Sometimes I'll just keep it in the cupboard. It just depends on what I'm doing. And then the last thing I have on this shelf is this big tub of popcorn chicken, which I use all the time. I do a lot of voiceovers, and when I am doing voiceovers, I like to snack, and that S my favorite thing to snack on. Alright, moving on to the next shelf here. This shelf is all condiments and other random things that I use. I've got some soy sauce, which I use all the time. I use this in stir-fries. I use this in marinades. I use this in salad dressings. I have some tomato paste, which I use all the time. And then I have some capers here, which I use in lots of Mediterranean cooking. I love capers. I think they're really good. I have some gray salt here, which is really good on grilled meats and fish. And then I have some honey. This is wildflower honey. I like to use this on toast. I use this in salad dressings. And then I have some hot honey. I'm obsessed with hot honey right now. I use this on pizza. I use this on chicken. I just think it's really good. And then I have some Frank's Red Hot here, which I also use all the time. I put this on pizza. I make hot honey with it. I use it in salad dressings. I use it in cocktails. I just think it's really, really good. And then I have some barbecue sauce here, which I use all the time. I grew up in the South, so I like to keep barbecue sauce around. And then I have some Korean chili powder, which I use when I'm making bibimbap. And then I have some beef broth here, which I use when I'm making ramen. Alright, and the last thing in my pantry is a little bit random. It's some of my favorite candy. I was gonna say snacks, but I'm trying to cut back on the snacks, so I'm just calling them candy. I've got some Twix bars, which I'm obsessed with right now. I have some M&Ms, which I use when I'm making s'mores. I have some Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, which I love. I have some Junior Mints, which I love. I have some gummy bears, which are my daughter's favorite. And then I have some Melty Dextrin, which is my absolute favorite candy bar of all time. It's my favorite dessert. If I could only eat one dessert for the rest of my life, it would be Melty Dextrin. That's it. That's what's in my pantry. Thanks for watching. Bye.